Welcome to the Church Communications Podcast, powered by Church Visuals. We believe that effective communication is integral to leading your congregation and community. Join Katie Allred and Carl Barnhill each week to dive into insights and strategies that will help you grow your church. Whether you're a pastor, a church leader, or someone interested in maximizing your communication to make a difference, you're in the right place. Let's get started.
Welcome to the Church Communications Podcast. I'm Katie, and with me again is Carl. Carl, how are you?
Hello. I'm knocking my mic everywhere, but I'm all right.
Oh, quit doing that. Is it amateur hour over here on the podcast?
It is. What is this thing? I don't know.
I don't know either. And today I'm really excited. I'm actually joined by my former colleague, but current friend, Eliana Casieres, who formerly worked with me at a large tech company. We can let you Google what that might be. But I'm excited to have Eliana with us today. Eliana, can you tell the people a little bit about yourself?
Hey everybody, I'm so excited to get to chat today with Katie and Carl. I was with Katie at an unnamed large social media corporation, and I was there for 3 years, and prior to that and concurrently with that, I was and am a social media consultant helping creators, nonprofits, and large organizations leverage the power of social media.
That's awesome. So bring us up to speed on maybe the trends that you're seeing, especially for the church. So any, social media, obviously you've seen things evolve over the last few years. So what are some trends that churches should be aware of and stay relevant with?
Man, this is such a tricky one. Because I don't want to be like, guys, that TikTok dance, and then you see some senior pastor embarrassing himself out there. So not that.
Fun. Can we all be TikTok dancing?
Yeah.
If that's the case, then yes, I would love to see every senior pastor TikTok dancing.
And this is the portion of the podcast where Katie gives an example. Katie?
Okay, yeah, let's go. We're going to start the Church Communications dance off. It's now a trend. It's trending across TikTok and multiple.
Guys, thanks for the call. It's been great. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Let me leave before I start dancing. Well, you know what? Things like in the before times, like pre-COVID, social media was very much just like a bulletin board for churches. It was like, hey, don't forget, the potluck on Saturday. Or some like very lightweight encouragement, like let me throw a random Bible verse up there with, a nice background. And that was about it. And very few churches were using it for like the really robust platform capabilities that were available until COVID. And then like it became very necessary to get on social media platform, whether that was Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, like some went to LinkedIn, wherever it was, Chop, you had to get yourself onto the internet to get in front of your congregation. And what I've seen post-COVID is some regression, unfortunately, back to that bulletin board kind of approach. And I know, a lot of that has to do with, a lot of pastors wanting, butts and seats. And there's been like, should we end streaming? Should we keep streaming? A lot of tension around that. And, if you feel like I don't need to stream because I just need to pastor the people who are here in my church, absolutely. Like, if that is your call, please, pursue that. But that's also why there's the fivefold ministry. And some people are meant to go out. And for those people, I would encourage you to keep using social media to go out and spread the word. Like there's such...
Eliana came to preach.
Girl, I'm on fire. It's funny you say that because what I would love to see continue trending for the future is discipleship being the reason for having social media. You have this, very far reaching platform, and that's great if you just want to put out encouragement and be like, guys, have you heard about Jesus? But it should be very intentional. It should be converting those views and likes into active seekers who are pursuing God.
So obviously, we've talked and there's been, Katie's book and things have talked about how the social media should not be a billboard for your church necessarily. Social should be social. So how much of that do you agree with, and how much of that, if I'm going to be a percentage of, 80% needs to be social interaction, 20% needs to be billboard promotion, where do you fall on that percentage?
I think that's a great breakdown. Because yes, you're speaking to a very broad audience, but you're still speaking to the people who are going to walk into your doors at some point. Our fearless leader, Nona Jones, used to say social media is a billboard in the sense of billboard versus bulletin board, in the sense of,
right,
if I'm driving down the freeway and I see this billboard, I know, oh, there is this church or there is this event that is happening, and now it's on my radar. Now it's, on my mind, I should, check that out. And if I drive this same route often enough, and I keep seeing that billboard, it's going to stick in my mind, oh, I got to check this thing out. And that is how your social media should be, where you're consistently posting so that as people are, on whatever, site you're using, whatever service you're using, they'll consistently see your message being put out there and being reminded oh yeah, such and such, so-and-so church is, doing whatever event, or they're talking about, or they're in this series, that really speaks to my current situation. Yeah. And you repeatedly do it. So absolutely 80-20, 80% is putting out meaningful content, and 20% is hey guys, don't forget about that potluck on Saturday.
Yeah. Okay. So on that note, can you maybe share some examples of churches that you feel are successfully doing that, and what can we learn from them?
So I don't want to name any specific churches, because I don't want people to think aha, that's the secret sauce, and they just try to copy paste.
People just try to copy them.
Exactly, exactly. And what's working for one church might not necessarily work for your church. So what I would recommend is and this is you guys, the listeners, who are the churches where the pastor or pastors, you can recall a sermon from them, a song or a version of a song from them, and you've never set foot in their building. And those are the examples. And it's because you've probably heard their podcast, you saw something from them on YouTube, you saw a post on Instagram, you've seen what's going on in their house of worship because of what they've broadcast to, the world on social media. And I would say from those churches, small to mega, there's 5 points for their strategies. Be authentic, be consistent, be experimental, be mission driven, and be present.
That's good.
Be authentic. What is shown on the platform has to match what's actually happening in your house of worship, because there's a chance that somebody's going to get so bought in to what they're seeing online, they're going to come and see about you. And if that experience does not match, it's just wait a second. And also people who are in your building and know what actually is happening, they've been a member of your congregation for a long time, they're going to know that's not us. What's being put out there, if your imagery doesn't match, your language doesn't match, who is this? Who are you talking to? Being consistent is key. You have to keep showing up. If people, if you want to keep encountering your target audience where they are, then you have to keep showing up. You have to keep being there.
Yeah.
I say be experimental because, you know, we would often hear like, you know, what I was doing last year just like isn't working. You know, you guys changed the algorithm again.
Yeah.
No, we didn't. But what does change the algorithm is people's interests and what they're looking for and what resonates with them. Man, that changes hour to hour sometimes for some people, but definitely over the course of a year, like what I'm interested in seeing or receiving isn't going to be the same. And so you have to be trying new topics, new formats, new ways of delivering this much. You know, like it's the same Jesus, but you're going to get experimental on how you're trying to communicate that message to your audience. Be mission driven. You know, I joked earlier about like the TikTok dances because like so often when people think like, oh, let's do something trendy because we just need to like have, you know, virality. It's like that, like that's cool. That's cute. But like for what? Be very intentional with your content, which again lends to that authenticity, and be present. I can't recommend enough, like not setting and forgetting your content because you want engagement, and sometimes engagement has to start with the host. Like you have
and the engagement has to be engaged inside the comments too. It's not.
Yes.
You can't just post something and then set it and forget it. Like you said, like, oh, I posted it, so it's out there. Like, well, people are commenting, people are engaging. Like, who are those people, and how can we get like in touch with them? Like,
you got it.
With them in a more meaningful way.
I hear from a lot of pastors that ask about what content, you know, they're struggling with what content to post. You know, or I don't know what to post. And my response is like, you have a huge sermon that you write every single week. That's like a gold mine for content. So what are some of the best practices that you've seen in creating and, you know, maybe engaging with or maybe clipping up already existing content or just kind of creating engaging, shareable content?
Oh, man. So my response for that is actually like, let's talk about your strategy first before we really select your tactics. I know I just did a LinkedIn post about this. But they are two separate things, and one has to come before the other. And so number one, get your strategy together first. And that strategy like acts as the infrastructure for what your content's going to run on. And so that starts with defining and understanding your audience. So write out your personas. Like, who's your audience? Like, who are you talking to? And you're going to want to write out your primary audience as well as your secondary audience, and like really make them a three-dimensional. Who are they? Where are they? What are their interests? What's, you know, what's like weighing them down in life? What channels do they use to find their content? And once you know like who you're talking to, then you have to define your goal.
Right.
If you're talking to them, what do you want that to accomplish? Whatever version of your content they're seeing, like what should it then lead to? Like, and maybe it is just views and likes. Maybe that's what's important. Like you just want it to be seen. That's okay. Maybe it's reach and shares. Okay, well, you might need a different strategy. And if it's real world translation into action, then you're definitely going to need a different strategy because that takes a lot more intentionality.
Yep.
From there, we're still on strategy. You're going to need to define your OKRs. And I know that's corporate speak. That means objectives and key results. And so that's as simple as
what's your goal?
Yeah, what's your goal? And how are you going to measure your progress on the way there? So we're going to reach target audience on these channels by whatever your planned, you know, actions you might take are, as measured by these key performance indicators to reach this goal. Once you get all that technical out of the way, the rest comes easy. We're going to select our different approaches, our different tactics based off of who we're going to be trying to reach, where they are, and what we're going to do to get them. Once you've got that, make sure you have your channels in place so that people can respond back to you, like have an active comment section with a moderator, enable your direct messaging, have email, like make sure you're letting people know, like you can talk to us, have a Facebook group or a Discord, like a community space for active and passive conversation. And then you get to talk about your content.
Right.
Yeah.
Then you get to talk
talk about content.
Invited to talk about it.
Yes. I think what's really great about churches is if you're using social media, there is an expectation of intentionality. You're on there to push something. And that's once you embrace that, like just fully lean into it. Like you're there to push Christ. You're there to push hope. You're there to push redemption. Well, whatever the message like that your church stands on, like that's what you're out there to push. And I would recommend when you're making that content, answer questions. is like a really big one, because it's one thing to just like, oh, I'm going to share this verse of the day and I want people to be encouraged.
Right.
You just throw a random verse up there and people respond, amen. And that's it. They go about their day.
Yeah. Well, Jesus didn't just throw a random verse at us, did he?
Who?
Right.
And then not elaborate.
Right.
He didn't just like say, here's Deuteronomy 15:13.
Right.
And then be like, all right, think about
Be
that.
blessed.
I'll see you next week.
Right. That's nope, we're gonna stay on time. So yeah, when you're making those posts, answer people's questions. Like, so I hear a lot of pastors, being very frustrated about millennials and Gen Z and soon Gen Alpha. They're not attending church. They're walking away from the church. They're walking away from their faith. And it's because of whatever they decide to blame it on. And a lot of it has to do with those individuals just don't have a deep understanding of God. They don't have a deep relationship with God, and they ask questions and they do seek and they are looking. But if the, church is giving them this, wall of like, how dare you ask these questions? How dare you question your faith? And like, what do you mean? That's really unhelpful. And so I cannot encourage churches enough to use their content to answer questions with good Bible-based teaching.
So I know that, I mean, obviously we need our strategy in place, and I think you did a very good job of walking that through. But instead of posting just the Bible verse, would it be better to post that Bible verse in the form of a question, or to post a more interactive way?
Something
and
that's
what
going to
would
make
you
people
suggest
respond.
in that matter?
I love that. So you can absolutely post a Bible verse graphic because you want something that's shareable. But attached to that, like in your post copy, there should be some kind of commentary on that. So, thinking of, Sunday school, like everybody recite a verse and it's like Jesus wept. And that's my verse.
Right.
Well,
Right.
Why did Jesus weep? What was paining him so deeply that he wept? Talk about what happens in the story before then and what broke his heart. And he's there on a mission. He's there to raise Lazarus from the dead. He knows he's going to raise Lazarus from the dead, but his heart breaks for how Mary is so distraught and like, Lord, if you had been here, he wouldn't be dead. And Martha being like, Jesus, like, I know you're the resurrection, but what are you going to do for us now? And speak hope into people's lives. Sorry, I'm Mary. I'm a mess.
Story, I'm Martha. I'm just like, but really, am I allowed to sit here and learn from you? Like, is that allowed? Are we okay? Like,
let me get some orders. But like and that's what I mean. Like, you can post Jesus wept as your verse, and in your description, you go into why was he weeping? Like, he knows he's going to help, resolve the situation. He knows he has all the power to fix this, but he hurts when we hurt. He feels our distress. He's there very presently in the situation with us. So if you are brokenhearted, his heart breaks for you, and he is coming to be your champion and resolve your situation. Like, that's your message. That's what should be going out to people. So answer questions and speak directly to people's situations. Pray for people. One of the most effective, simplest posts I've seen churches do is ask, how can we pray for you?
Yeah.
And you'll get so many responses. And you then have to, again, be present and respond. So if somebody is saying like, oh, like, pray for me, I have, a test tomorrow. It's like, Lord, we pray for, wisdom and yada, yada, yada. And if somebody's like, hey, actual like crisis is happening in my life, that's somebody pastoral needs to reach out and connect with that person. And you need to have channels in place for them to then like have a real prayer time, a real conversation with that person, and make sure that they are connected to, someone in the church to get real care.
Social media is a powerful way to start and stay connected to your church congregation. But social media can also be pretty distracting. So some churches have turned to costly solutions like a custom church app to solve this problem, but these apps aren't accessible to every church because of the cost. So My Sermon Notes is an interactive note-taking app that allows your church members to take fill-in-the-blank notes of your sermons. The notes are synced between devices and shareable with friends. My Sermon Notes also has a powerful community-engaging feature like prayer requests, announcements, and connection cards. Communicate with your congregation outside of the distractions of social media apps. So My Sermon Notes has no setup fees or contracts. You can sign up for a 30-day free trial and get 25% off your first year at mysermonnotes.com/churchcom. Again, that is mysermonnotes.com/churchcom with 2 M's. All right, back to the podcast. Turning the page a little bit. So how can churches effectively manage their social media presence when there's so many different platforms, and essentially like, how can they manage it across platforms, but also still maintaining their brand image? Like, there's going to be a lot of different ways to do that, I think.
So I know I said be experimental. There are limits. Like, if you have no business being on that platform, do not be on that platform. If you go back to your strategy, and you're thinking about your personas and where your audience is, another side of that is, what content are you going to be putting out there?
That's good.
If it is your sermon, which is chock full of content for your week, if you're doing a series, like however long that series is, like, that's like week, 2 weeks, month, 2 months, however long, really robust content, like whether you're clipping those messages into little sound bites, or your pastor wants to come back on and be like, guys, I had another revelation. Here's what I want to talk to you about today. Or you're doing your small group content based off of the sermon. You're doing reading plans together, which I cannot recommend enough. But anyway, based off of what you've said in your strategy about your audience and what you know is the type of content you're able to put out, that's what decides what platforms you should be on. Once you know, so it's like, if you're going to put out a lot of video content, absolutely be on YouTube. And then from there, it's like, okay, well, what other platforms have video capability where people will actually be there to watch videos? And then you'll decide, okay, like Instagram for like really short clips, or I want to do something longer. Well, I'm going to put that on Facebook. I'm going to keep it on our site. If it's going to be a lot of like imagery, Instagram, like for sure, like that's photos. Do you need to be on Be Real for your photos as a church? Probably not. But,
or maybe we don't know yet, you know.
Maybe, but it's probably not a fit right now. And that's the thing. Like, it might be a fit in the future, but is it a fit right now? It might be a fit
for your student ministry, but it depends again. Who are you trying to reach and why?
Exactly. Right? And then once you know like what platforms are going to give you the most bang for your buck, have a brand kit. And that might sound a little strange for a church to have a brand kit, but it's critical. Like, and have a brand kit that has templates. And a brand kit tends to be inclusive of your fonts, your colors, your logo. That's really easy. But it should also say, this is our voice. So when this account is posting as the church, this is the personality, this is the tone, this is the kind of language that we use. If it's, best to separate the pastor, and the pastor has their own account because they want to talk a certain way, right. And the church wants to, have their own voice and talk a different way, separate accounts and separate brand kits. But whatever the church brand kit is, like, this is the church's voice. And what's the goal and what's the promise that your content should be delivering? So if somebody's like, hey, I want to put this up there, does that align with our goal or our promise? Included in that is your values and your position. What are the key values of your church? What's your church's stance on key issues? And that might even be something that's like, you have people who are volunteering with running your social media, and somebody asks a question and they're like, well, I feel such and such way about it. Right. We didn't ask you how you feel about it. We asked the church how the church feels about it. So all of that should be in the brand kit. So everyone has that available resource that says, like, this is how we will show up on whatever platform we're being found on. And our consistency will make it easily identifiable. So like, as I'm scrolling and I'm swiping, I see that post, I know exactly who it is. I know exactly what I'm about to get. And that slows me down. And you're probably going to be able to grab me for at least those, critical first 3 seconds before I swipe again. And in that time, like, what are you delivering to me? Because if you get somebody who's, posting something that's just, buck wild, it's like, unfollow. And I never see your content again. Versus this is consistent, and it's consistently leading me closer to God.
Right. I think that brand kit is very important. We found a resource recently called Brand Bay that puts that all together, where in an online format as opposed to a PDF version, which should work, would work. But Brand Bay is an online resource where you can pull down your icons and logos and stuff like that. So, somewhere to keep that all together,
where it can be found really easily. Do trainings on it. Like, whoever has access to your social, like your public channels, has to be trained on the brand kit, because you'll get the, I didn't know, after you have a mess to clean up.
Yeah, good. That's good. What about churches with limited resources or staff? How do they maximize their social media impact and engagement? Should I use volunteers?
You can, if you can train them. I love the idea of using volunteers, because people who volunteer in churches tend to be like really enthusiastic, like really bought into, that community. And man, like you can't train that enthusiasm.
Yeah.
So
True.
if you can get volunteers who want to
Or
participate
sometimes
and
you
support,
can't buy it.
you
Via staff.
listen.
Yeah. It's true.
And especially because, like, you could hire me to be your consultant, but I would need to, like, be embedded in your church to, like, really be able to authentically deliver your voice and your everything that a volunteer who's been there for months or years is just like, well, I know, like, this is us, this is who we are, this is how we are, as
Totally different.
totally different.
Yeah.
So absolutely, like, leverage and empower volunteers. I would also recommend just being, again, like, really strategic in your selection of social media channels, because maybe you don't have a really robust volunteer team. Maybe it's an army of 1 or 3. If you're trying to manage like 10 different accounts, oh my goodness, no, like, that's a great way to lose your volunteers and lose your staff. But if we are on, these platforms, we post on these days, we post this content, that's much more manageable. And speaking of that, like, use a content calendar. Plan your content, like, plan as far out as possible and get it scheduled. So that can be with a content scheduler. Like, there's one that's like built into Business Suite for Facebook and Instagram. And then there's others, like third-party ones, if you're using multiple platforms.
Hootsuite.
Mm-hmm.
Buffer.
Yeah. And they're great. And they also give a lot of visibility. So if your team is, virtual, everyone can see. It's like, hey, I don't see anything scheduled for Tuesday. Who's in charge of that? Oh, it's me. Sorry, I'm still doing like final edits. It's like, okay, well, if we can have that done by, it's just.
I think that's a good way too, that you can make sure that your church's voice is consistent.
Mm-hmm.
Where you can have a volunteer do your scheduling, but I get, as the church staff member, get to approve that calendar before you start going to post.
Absolutely.
It's a double check on to make sure my messaging, brand, all that stays consistent. And a way you can still use volunteers, but still manage the process.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That was good. I was taking a note.
And then for, if you have, again, like, just limited resources, you can do like really fantastic video and photo editing on your phone now. And so instead of, having to like rack your brain for something, new and fresh for every day, especially if you're posting multiple times a day, use the content that's already there, which is those sermons. And micro clipping is such a great tool. Like, if your pastor has probably already written an outline for that sermon, it's like, here are my 5 key points, or here are my 3 key points. Well, there you go. There are your 3 posts, your 5 posts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they're conversation starters. The copy writes, itself, from there, like, our pastor shared, this key point about this topic.
Yeah.
What resonated with you, or did you agree, or what's been your experience? And I'm not saying like invite controversy, like that was dumb, but you want to invite conversation about it.
Yeah.
Because yes, you want engagement, but more importantly, like, what people are chewing on when they're engaging with your content is the Word of God. It's, they're being Bereans. They are going and seeking for themselves. Is this what it says?
Last question for you. So how much would you suggest using AI tools for that? So if I dump my sermon into a Chat GPT, or if I dump my YouTube clip into like an Opus clip or something like that, how beneficial is that? Is that too impersonable? How much tweaking do I need to get in there and do to make sure that it's relational and not robotic?
A lot.
What do you think?
A lot. So I love this question, because AI is something I'm spending a lot of time working on right now, and I can't stress enough that the key to really maximizing AI is the human touch. Like it is giving the right prompts and refining over and over and over and over until it gives an authentic voice. I think AI is a great starting point for when you're trying to write copy. It's great for, giving direction to where you will eventually work it to, because it's going to give you that output and you can refine and refine and refine until it's just like, let me just do my own editing. Let me put my own voice in there. I think it's a great tool for saving a lot of time with just, trying to come up for, today's, witty or inspirational quotes. Just like get a list of it. It's a list of ideas.
Well, not everybody can be as witty as Katie, where it comes
true.
Naturally.
That's not true.
It's from all those
everybody
lessons.
else that are, not superhuman, we need a Chat GPT or something,
I love some Chat GPT. It's making me wittier by the minute.
It's a great starting point. You will.
It won't do your work for you.
Yeah.
But it will help you get your job done.
That's exactly it.
Yeah. I've been telling people it's like a wheelbarrow, and we're putting the bricks in there to build the wall, and it helps you carry those bricks, but it ain't going to build the wall for you.
Yes.
Yeah. No, that's good. Eliana, this has been fantastic. So thank you so much for being
Thanks
here. We
for
really
having
do
me.
appreciate it.
Yep.
This is really helpful for a lot of churches. So again, thank you. But my next question for you is, where can people find you and how can they connect with you if they would like to?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, of course. Eliana Caceres, Caceres. You can also, depending on when this airs, you can find me on my website. I'm changing site host right now, and so my website is down.
Fine. Yeah, you're good. You'll be ready by the time this premieres.
Okay, good. It's crownedfox.consulting.
Oh,
That's
awesome.
my website.
There's a dot consulting.
Mm-hmm. Instead of
We're
.com,
learning so much.
dot consulting.
Is it crowned as in past tense? Fox. Dot consulting. Excellent.
So easy.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, I'm so glad to hear that, and also that you can help churches with their needs because they have some.
Yeah.
And I do believe that you are so good at this. You have such a unique perspective and such a gifting. So, again, thank you so much for joining us, Eliana.
Thanks
we
for
appreciate
having
it.
me.
Thanks for joining us for the Church Communications Podcast. To learn more and get more resources for your church, visit churchcommunications.com.